when I decided I wanted to commit fully to being a reviewer, I started to put into words what I thought should be like the guiding principles to ensure that my reviews are worth watching or reading. Because I'm a consumer of reviews. I've read and watched reviews for decades, and that, of course, shapes my expectations and preferences. So to guide myself, I wanted to distill that down into some sort of principles or guidelines. And I know I'm not a perfect reviewer, for sure. I do know, however, that I am pushing myself as hard as I can. I really want to be as good as I can be while still being me. But what does that goal actually entail? Being as good as I can be, that's very vague. And that's what I'm gonna try to explain here. Well, like try to hone in on what it is I'm trying to achieve with my reviewing. So this is in part about what I seek in a review from my consumer perspective, but it is also addressed to my future self as a reviewer to sort of outline what I should aspire to achieve. So I've sorted this in order of priority. So this is sort of a hierarchy of priorities or hierarchy of guidelines for me. And so the very first thing, I think, the most important thing in a review is to entertain. Because if it's not enjoyable to read or watch, then nothing else matters. Like, then it's just a slog. And there are many ways to make a review entertaining. I'm not saying it should be like a stand-up comedy routine. Although that said, being funny in a second language is a really good test of your command of that language, and English is not my first language. So I do aspire to be funny. I'm evidently not succeeding in this video, but who knows, maybe one day I'll crack the code. I also have entertain as the number one priority because it's a little too easy to take yourself too seriously as a reviewer. In my very first video on this channel, I do mention that I'm just one guy with opinions, and actually that is true for all the other reviewers as well. No matter their posturing or experience, it's still dudes with opinions, and it's pretty much always dudes. Though Stereophile has Julie, who is a woman reviewer, and I hope we get more in the future. Women are embarrassingly underrepresented in this. They are no worse listeners or no worse at describing the sensations experienced while listening than men. In fact, I think they're often better at these things. So I hope we see more women reviewers in the future. Anyway, that was a sidetrack on this. So the priority is to entertain. So the objective is to take the job very seriously without taking yourself so goddamn seriously. And then number two is to scrutinize. And that is because the value we as reviewers can provide is not to regurgitate the brand's own marketing slogans and bullet points or whatever. You can find that on your own. You don't need a reviewer to repeat it for you. In fact, reviewers should actively investigate the sort of veracity of marketing claims rather than repeating them. And a lot of hi-fi gear is deep in luxury territory, and we should have very high demands on luxury products, of course, in terms of performance, but also, you know, ergonomics and compatibility, reliability, serviceability, and so on. So no product is perfect for everyone and in every situation and in every system. So a review with no criticism, with no contextualization of where the product shines and where it doesn't, is a review that makes me feel a little suspicious, because that sounds like marketing. So always scrutinize. Now, sometimes you do encounter a product where you're really struggling to find any flaws, but then you can just be transparent about that at least you tried, you know. And you don't need to put it that way. You can just say that, well, I was thinking it would struggle with this and this, but then I tested that and no, it didn't. You know, you can tell that story in an entertaining way. So to scrutinize does not mean to shit on something. It just means that, you leave no stone unturned. Third priority is to feel. At least that's how I decided to put it in my little script here that I'm following. And what do I mean by feel? What should a reviewer feel? There are reviewers that do everything else on this list very, very well, but then for whatever reason project this sort of stoic indifference to music's emotional impact. And I suppose this is to seem objective and perhaps to guard against getting too swept up in the moment and sort of ending up reviewing the music more than the gear that conveys the music. And that's an, admirable goal. But if you can't convince me that you love music, you love what music does to you, and you live for extracting that out of the music through the equipment, and like that, eyes on the prize, it's the what music does. That's the whole point of listening to hi-fi. It's what the music can do to you, better or worse, through different combinations of equipment. If you don't manage to convince me that that's what you live for, that's what you aim for, that is what is important to you, then I don't know that I can trust your reviews. I need to know that you feel something, At least that's where I am right now. This might change. I'm a relatively new reviewer. Maybe with miles on the meter and maturity in this respect, I will sort of pivot to that type of stance. I don't know. I'm not going to rule it out, but it just feels far-fetched for me right now. I want to hear about emotions. I want to know what a product sounds like, of course, but I also do want to know what it feels like. And those aren't always the same thing. Now, yeah, not everyone shares this perspective. Not everyone wants reviews to be like that. Some people probably think that that's too flowery and too hippie feely stuff. They want, hard facts more than anything. But just like with music and just like with, I don't know, recipes for guacamole, there are different opinions. And not every reviewer is ideal for everyone. So do let me know if you want reviewers to express their emotions. I'm curious. Am I alone in this? Anyway. It's okay that we're different. It's okay that we have different preferences. I'm writing this list to align with my preferences and my priorities. And I think that a reviewer should be clear on what music through a certain piece of equipment feels like, and if it's different versus that music through other equipment. To me, that's at the core of reviewing. So that's why it's number 3 behind scrutinize and entertain. Number 4, use. Reviews should include testing a product in varying contexts to highlight where it shines and where it doesn't. A speaker tested in one position in one room with one amplifier and one genre of music isn't going to tell you a whole lot. So don't diss Dijon mustard just because you've tried it on waffles. Like you gotta find where something performs at its best, and you should also, as a reviewer, try to find where it doesn't, because you're not reviewing for yourself, you're reviewing for everyone, and it's very unlikely that very many people have your type of setup and your type of taste in music and all of that. So try to highlight what it's like in varying contexts. And I call this point use because I also need you as a reviewer, and need myself as a reviewer, to take on a sort of consumer perspective. A reviewer needs to practically speedrun the experience of having bought the piece of equipment and living with it, and trying to, in as short of a time as possible, to find the things that a consumer might find over time, both positive and negative. And in use means also to really take a look at interface. Is there an app for this? Is it responsive? Is it good? Is it logical? What's the remote like? What's the knob feel like? Does it fit a normal rack? all of these things that are like not about sound quality, but that impact how you live with this product and what it's like to yeah, and have in everyday use, basically. I think that's a very important aspect of these things. It's said about cameras that the best camera you have is the one you brought with you, which is why we all take photos with our phones, even if we have fancy cameras. Because you don't always want to lug around a DSLR and the lenses and whatever. And this sort of translates to hi-fi. Like if it's really cumbersome and like annoying to play music, or to get things set up or whatever, you're not going to do it as much. And that's an important factor, I think, in reviews. So use is a lot of things. Sound quality is one, trying it in different ways, but also all of these other aspects of like living with this product. And then number 5 is, to me, the last one on the list. I have only 5 sort of guidelines. Otherwise it gets too much. And the 5th and last one is facts. And it's last on this list. It's on the list, granted, but it's the last one on the list because it's 2026, at least when I'm recording this. Who knows, maybe 2030 when you watch this. But practically everything you need to know about any product can be found online. That wasn't always the case, you know, in decades past of hi-fi reviewing. But reading or hearing someone else read the specifications of an amplifier or whatever is just incredibly boring. It's really difficult to make that a fun read. And as you might recall, entertain was my number 1 priority. So that wins in the battle of facts versus entertainment, at least for me. Now, that said, in a magazine like Stereophile that I write for, a review is sort of meant to be a complete package of information about a product, both subjective and objective, because we also do measurements, that will contain all the information you're likely to need even like 30 years later. You can read a 30-year-old review in Stereophile and get all the technical facts, get the measurements, and also get the subjective impressions. That's a really nice sort of package of information, and that Stereophile does this decade after decade means that there's this incredible library of information about products. And hats off to that. But as a consumer, I don't need facts to be in the review. If I'm curious, I can look at it. Like, yeah, if an amplifier does 8 watts per channel, you should probably mention that because it's kind of important. But whether, it doubles into 4 ohms or only does 1.75x the 8 ohm output, like that matters less, And there you can have a little facts and figures box that is separate, so you don't need to do it like in the prose, like in the sort of narrative part of the review. So basically, if a review doesn't mention, the exact crossover frequency to the tweeter, and I happen to really care about that, I can probably look it up. So get the important facts in, get the things in that matter and that differs, that sets the product apart maybe, and tell a story around that, but don't just regurgitate the spec sheet straight up and down. It's no fun. That's harder to do in video reviews because you don't have a separate facts box really. I know some do it like you have on screen for 5 seconds just a written list of all the specs, and people can pause if they care. Maybe that's the way to do it in video, but don't sit there and like talk about every single streaming protocol necessarily. Or maybe you do. Anyway, facts is like not that important. It's kind of malleable. You can err on the side of providing less and still make a really good review. That's my thinking. So anyway, that's my hierarchy. Entertain, scrutinize, feel, use, and facts. That's 4 verbs and a noun, isn't it? I should probably have thought this through a little bit more. Anyway, this list is of course just my opinion and not some sort of unassailable truth. So Do you disagree with any of this? Would you change the order of the priorities? Is there something I'm missing that should be a big priority? Do let me know, because maybe that will make me a better reviewer. Help me understand what you seek in reviews. I'm happy to hear from my viewers here. So that's what I think makes a good review, but what makes a good reviewer? That's a different question, and I'll share some thoughts on that in the next video. Until then, thank you so much. Give a little thumbs up if you feel like it, subscribe, whatever, or don't, and have a good day. See ya.